Welcome to the first class in this room of the day. This is who I am, and I'm Anthony Becker. Bill and I do a YouTube channel, thegurumeditation.org, and so I'm Guru Anthony. Doesn't mean anything other than I've owned an Amiga since that's the date I purchased my 500. I'm a person who never left the Amiga. It's not like one of these people. I had one, I got back into it. I've been into it all along. I've had them since 1988. I do not still have that 500. I got rid of that 2 years later when I got my 2000. So we're going to go through, you buy an Amiga, or someone gives it to you, or you had it in the closet, you break it out, you go to turn it on and it doesn't work. Of course, the first thing you have to know is which one you've got. So there's a bunch of small models. There's the 1000, which I actually have is considered both, because really a 1000 is a 500, but it's in a bigger case. Then you have basically, these are in order that they were released up to the AGA 1200. Those are the small machines, and they're very compact. Everything's inside the one unit. And then you have the big machines, which is one I have here, the 4000, where you have two pieces. It's like the IBM PC. You have tower versions. But basically, they're all pretty similar. This is your motherboard in a 1000. You have an extra RAM thing that goes on the front. So when you open up the case, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see this big green thing with a whole bunch of rectangular things. 1000 is funky. You got this other board on top. What the heck is that? That's a Kickstart RAM tower that actually loads your Kickstart, because Kickstart wasn't done when the 1000 was released, so they had you load it from disk. Then you come on to the 500. Really, biggest difference between the two is you got a big square chip in there. You have this RAM board. It's all kinds of stuff. 600 shaped like that. 1200 shaped like that. That's your small machines. Now the 600 and 1200, if you notice, no sockets. Everything except for the two ROM chips. So there's really not much to do in these if something goes wrong. Same thing in this 600. Only the Kickstart ROM is socketed. But if you're lucky enough to have the older machines, almost everything is socketed. So then of course you get up to the big machines. Big machines just they're basically taking the small machine, they add slots to it. So you got 2000, you got right next to the big rectangular CPU, you got a CPU slot. You have your Zorro slots along the front, you have ISA slots along the back, you got a video slot all the way over on the right. And of course, when you get one of these machines from somebody, it could have all kinds of cards in it. When you switch it on, you don't know what's wrong, what's going wrong with it. The 3000 moved all of your slots to a riser card. One thing you have to know is you can never turn on a 3000 and get it to do anything without the riser card in. It's absolutely required in the machine. So don't even try to test it without the riser card in it. It's just not going to work. And 4000 is basically the same thing as the 3000, just a little bit smaller and a different chipset. And again, they've taken everything, so it's all socketed to everything is basically surface mount. So first thing is batteries. The most important thing I consider on an Amiga is these batteries. And you can have anywhere of, you can actually probably have more types of batteries than these. These are the three most common. Will be like a AAA battery that's sitting in an expansion that's out of a Starboard expansion for a 1000. There are coin batteries, and there's these big barrel batteries. And I actually have one. I only have one that's still attached to a board. That's this guy. These batteries do this after a while. So the most important thing when I get a machine is getting the battery off it. And I only haven't taken this one off because I can see it and I can keep cleaning it off. But you can see this one, there's that fuzz on one side. These will eat your motherboard, these will eat your traces. There's a few ways to remove them. The best defense is that, and some people, they'll desolder it from the back. Actually remove, there's 3 points they're held on. The easiest way I've found is you cut one of the two with a wire cutter up here, and then you can just wiggle the battery very little, and it eventually just comes right off, especially if it started to leak. And then, of course, it's just cleaning, because if it's leaked, and it's leaked by now, it's just getting that stuff off the motherboard.
Do you replace them at an interval, or just to be safe, or just...
Every one of these barrel batteries should come off. There's a lot of different replacements, and that's my optional replace the batteries. The only thing this battery does in an Amiga is hold the date and time. That's all it does. So what you can do is just type in the date and time, or go into preferences, set the date and time. I've not replaced any Amiga batteries. I've purchased, and what I've purchased is this. This is actually a 2000 motherboard. Used to have that barrel, but now instead it has a coin. Person soldered that in there, and you just replace that battery when it goes dead. That's not rechargeable, so when battery goes dead, you replace it. Thing is, there's other things in there, and that's these capacitors. And you can see one right here. It's this guy, and basically these are just like batteries. They'll leak on a motherboard and cause damage as well. Biggest problem on the Amiga is you have one instance where there's a wrong capacitor type. That's the audio circuit. They discovered it in the 4000. It's probably in every Amiga, and that'll eventually cause audio to go out. And all you have to do to get your audio back is replace those capacitors with the right ones. The other problem is the backwards installed capacitors, and this is a big problem in the 4000. So I mean, this is some pictures, leaked capacitors. So this is the second thing I do after removing the battery is I look around on the motherboard, just look around for black or brown stuff underneath these barrels, near these orange things. And with the surface mount, you got the little silver guys. And sometimes what you'll see is this black, oily stuff. And you can actually see it's actually all around that chip, is that black, oily stuff.
What was the wrong capacitor type?
Getting to that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This guy has a great website. It's all about, and I believe it's a polarized capacitor that's in the audio circuit that he says is the wrong type. And he details on this site about what that capacitor is, why it causes the audio to fail, and how to replace it where it is. He talks specifically about the 4000, but he suspects it was probably in the 1000 and just got carried forward to all the rest of the machines. And this is the backwards installed capacitors. And this is a very big problem on the CPU card that's in the 4000. That CPU card, it's called the 3640 because it's the same slot that was in the 3000 is the CPU slot in the 4000. And a lot of the capacitors on that board were installed backwards. So they're basically positive to negative, eventually causes those capacitors to fail, causes the board to fail. And being it's the only CPU in the 4000 is on this daughter card that causes the 4000 to fail. I mean, replacing capacitors is a matter of desoldering, buying, and at this point, in Amiga kit, you can actually purchase the capacitor kit for Amigas, and so it basically has all the capacitors in it, if you can do it yourself. This guy, Mac Caps, he does capacitor replacements for 1200, 4000, and Macs, and or you can send it off to Amiga Kit in the UK, and they'll do it for you. That would be how I would go, because I don't think I would want to deal with surface mount. I guess what they do is they use a hot air dryer, like a hot air, almost like for your hair, and basically to melt the solder, get the caps off. That's what he says he uses. I don't know, but I would never do that myself. I'm not that crazy.
Can I interrupt you a second?
Yeah, sure.
This is Greg Berlin, who designed
Yes.
the Amiga 4000.
Maybe he can tell us about the audio capacitor then. After I said good things to him.
So
Anyway,
no, the reason why I went and got him was you were saying that there was the wrong kind of capacitor in the audio circuit. Is this something you knew about and you messed up, or is this?
Things wrong.
So
I've never had my audio go out on my machines. I have heard this happen where audio on an Amiga goes out, and it's because of a polarized capacitor in the audio circuit that is...
Yeah.
And this guy has a whole write-up.
That should be, if you polarize that, if the negative goes towards the load, it should be okay. But if they may have used like a bad kind of cap or something.
It could be.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Are you having a bad week or what's up, man?
I don't remember.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well,
this is a crazy time to interact with one of these
that's
guys,
good.
right?
Hey, I'm all for that. What this guy says is it's in the 4000, but chances are it's just the same circuit was carried forward from other Amigas. It's just, this was the audio circuit. Since audio didn't change much from Amiga to Amiga, except that the chip, I don't know enough about it.
Here's the interesting tidbit about the audio. You go left and right or backwards.
No.
Nobody ever
Yeah, unless you're listening to Pink Floyd. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Well,
Fine.
but we're in the room now, so.
Yeah, now I gotta be real careful. This site is really neat. So if you have a battery that's basically leaked on the motherboard and traces are gone, this guy has done this site where he's got the 1200, he's got the 4000, and you click them, and the motherboard comes up, and you can actually click a pad, and it'll trace back. You can see a little yellow line. It'll trace that trace all the way back. And this can help you if, I know I've seen pictures online of some people who've actually, because the traces have been, because of the acid in the battery on the motherboard are gone, they'll actually solder a little wire, and this can help you figure out where to put that wire. So, you got an Amiga, it doesn't boot. You've opened it up, especially if it's a big one. What could the problem be? I said the first thing, of course, to try to do is to pull out cards that are in there. And I've basically ranked what I've seen as the most likely cards to cause issue, and the CPU accelerators being the top one, because obviously you have a card in there with a different CPU. If that card's bad, the machine's not going to boot. CPU socket cards, these are cards, they usually, Insider RAM board was a popular one for the 500 and 1000. It's basically where you take the CPU out on the socketed machines, you drop the board and you drop the CPU, and of course if that board goes bad, chances are the machine's not going to boot. Memory cards is the next one. Of course, that's memory card's bad. It could cause the machine not to start up. A video card, that's especially Opal Vision. And then hard drive controllers, it's not going to probably cause your machine not to boot. It'll probably not cause the machine not to display. It could cause the machine not to boot, but those can have RAM on them too. And then you have your miscellaneous, probably won't cause an issue till you actually go to run that software, and that's like your emulator cards, frame grabbers, all your wacky video stuff. So as you could see, I mean, your CPU accelerators, it's a computer. It's got RAM on it, it's got CPUs, it's got a whole bunch of stuff, and two 2000s I've had that didn't work. These were the culprits. It was that the accelerator cards had gone bad. And again, probably capacitor issue. These are a lot harder to get fixed unless you know what you're doing, because it's not like a motherboard. There's a lot of different brands. You're probably not going to find someone who's just going to do it. So you're going to have to do that yourself. Except for this guy, this is the 4000's 040 board, and again, that's since that board's so common, there's people who do that for I think about $40. They'll replace the caps on it. On the socket cards, again, that's the insider for the 1000. It sits where the 68000 goes, and any of those things are sitting between the processor and the motherboard could cause problems. This is where you find expansions on the 1000. They're on the right-hand side. On the 500, they're on the left. So you want to pull those off, then try the machine. Hopefully it comes on, and then you know what was wrong with it. Your other boards, there's that RAM board that's sitting in the front of the 1000. Pull that out, see if the machine boots. All the small machines underneath, they have the bay that you open up, and they'll have a RAM card in there. Pull those out. And then this is just what memory boards look like. Your older 2000s with all kinds of little chips, and your newer 4000, 3000 with beautiful SIMs that you could actually pull out. And if you have a RAM issue, you could actually pull out each SIM, figure out which one's bad instead of trying to go after a whole bunch of chips. That's why I prefer the later machines, saying that loud for the people over there. Your other expansion cards, now Zorro slot video cards. Very hard to tell what card, and again, it's like, so an Opal Vision sitting in the video slot, that's intercepting your video. If that card goes bad, chances are you're not going to get a display. But a video toaster, that's not going to cause a problem until you go to run the software. This is just what Amiga hard drive controllers look like. A lot of times they have RAM on them. A lot of times they have space for drives. Sometimes they don't. And good thing about the Amiga is it tries to help you. It actually goes through a whole boot process where it's checking its hardware, and this is just some of the things it does as it starts up, where it's checking, and as it gets to each point, you see these change screen colors. So when it changes the screen color, it's basically telling you at some points what's going on. So your hardware's testing okay, your software's coming up okay, hey, everything worked great. Of course, you end up, and I've ended up with some machines with some of these, whole screen is just a color, there's something wrong. So, and this is stuff, you know, you do some searches online, you find different things. If you're sitting on a dark gray screen, they say press on the custom chips, make sure they're all seated properly. Honestly, I've never had a chip that wasn't seated properly. I've never had one come out, but I guess it could happen. Same thing with light gray. Red, you get to the point where maybe you have a bad Kickstart ROM. Green, now you have possibly a chip RAM issue. And of course, the keyboard also tests itself. So you got some blinking. So one blink, your keyboard ROM failed. 2 blinks, the RAM failed. 3 blinks. Good thing about the big ones is you can get adapters, let you just plug in like a standard PC keyboard. A little bit harder on the 500, 1200, and 600. Good thing is 600, and apparently I'm guessing it's a common issue, is the keyboard membrane failing. You can buy those for $30. There's 2 types, a green and a blue. You've got to make sure which type of membrane your keyboard has when you order it. I did this. The new ones are even cheaper than the ones Commodore used. So they'll probably fail faster, but it's brand new. It looks like it's brand new manufacturer. They're not quite the same as Commodore's. They don't have a coating. Commodore had like a clear coating on where the cable comes out. I forgot, I had one to show here, but I forgot to get it out of my car. So if you actually get a boot screen, there's your Kickstart 1.0. Doesn't give you much help. If you're staring at this and no matter what you do, it doesn't boot up. You either have a bad hard drive or bad floppy drive. You put the floppy in and you never get off the screen. Could be just a bad disk. Try another disk. The good thing is they started adding things to help you try to figure out what was wrong. Because a lot of times you'd install some piece of software and all of a sudden Workbench doesn't load. They added options to disable like your startup sequence, so you just get to a command line and then you can just load Workbench. You've bypassed startup sequence, and now you can load your editor, go in there and try to figure out where this program dumped a line that caused my machine to stop working. You can also select your boot device. If you plug in a second drive with a full operating system, you'll see it come up on the list. You boot off that drive and then go on the other drive with your software and look around and try to figure out what was wrong. 3.0 added even more. So you have your boot options, you can change your display types. So if you're seeing just the screen is rolling, it's PAL, you have an NTSC monitor, you can force the machine into the other, into NTSC and get your display up right. You can choose what drive to boot from, you can disable drives, you can, all I've ever seen on that screen on expansion board diagnostic is the list of my expansion boards. I've never seen what happens if, I'm guessing it'll say something. I've never seen anything but working on the right-hand
I
side.
have had one go bad.
You have?
The screen comes up red and it says status bad.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Great. It's good that it works.
It does.
It's awesome. So Now the places that I go, so if you get an Amiga, you take a board out, you have no idea what it is. These are two great sites, the Big Book of Amiga Hardware and the Hardware Database. So you can actually, you know, if you kind of know it's a hard drive, you click expansions, you go bring up, usually you can see some kind of logo of the company. They're sorted by the type of card, companies, and then just go through. They have pictures. A lot of times they'll have, you can download the PDF of the manual. And a lot of times you can download a DMS or ADF of the install disk, which could be something, if the drive's gone bad in a machine, you could be missing. So these are two great sites to get those, the information and the install disks. This is another site, just has install disks, and of course Aminet. Once you know what the card is, do a search on Aminet. Sometimes you'll find some drivers or some information there on it. Of course, there's also this FTP site that has a lot of install disks, manuals, and this is actually attached. English Amiga Board is also a forum, and there it is on the right, where you can go ahead and post questions. So if you know you have this board, you're having a problem, just some sites where you can throw your question up and see if someone else has had a similar problem or might, you know, be able to give you some information. Lemon Amiga, and of course, can't not mention Vintage Computer Federation, which runs this. Now, as far as books and magazines, manuals for hardware, because you've gotten a machine, you didn't get any manuals with it, all you got is the box. These two sites have all the manuals, books, everything you could ever want to know is pretty much on there. It's only a few pieces of hardware I haven't found the manual on one of these two sites and been able to actually look through and pretend I was back in the 1990s. And archive.org has a great selection of the old manuals, magazines, again, just where all the information is. And then once you know what's wrong, it's two sites, Amiga Kit. I had a Data Flyer SCSI Plus in a 1200 and a pin. It uses a little riser, so it takes the IDE, you stuck on this little riser, and then the Data Flyer SCSI Plus went on that and gave you a SCSI port on the back. Problem is that riser had broken, and now nothing was working because the hard drive passes through that. So even an IDE drive wasn't working. Amiga Kit actually had little risers, so a lot of times you can find your parts. Again, they sell the capacitor kits, they sell battery replacements, so those little plastic things that hold the button, they sell those. And Kipper 2K, this is a site for new hardware, so RAM boards for 500, 600, a new accelerator for the 600 that goes on the CPU, the Vampire, they sell it through that site. It's pretty neat. And our Shameless Plug, maybe we've had a similar problem and we've gotten around to doing a video on it, and you might see it there or you might not. Probably won't so far, but we have a lot of fun. So I have here a 4000, and what I've been doing is trying to preserve my hard drives. So I've been taking the drives out and basically copying them over to compact flash cards. And when I went to turn on this poor thing, it gave me a purple screen. I'm hoping it still does it so that I can show you opening it up and trying to figure out what's wrong. And I even managed to get a CPU board. And there's a beautiful purple screen, which came on when I went to turn this on. This is a machine I was hoping to also take my Amiga SCSI drives, because there's a SCSI controller in it, and copy them over to an IDE compact flash, because the SCSI to SD are like $70 and compact flash adapters are like 3 for $20. But the machine didn't work, so it's basically sat on my desk for a while because I haven't messed with it. But so I've already taken the 2 screws in the back out. So basically, obviously, first good thing to do is unplug everything. So that's what greets you in a 4000. Your expansion cards, your video slot, and your Zorro slots. So there's my SCSI controller, there's my network card, there's the processor card down underneath where the floppy and CD-ROM go, and then usually a whole bunch of cables. That's my compact flash to IDE sitting in here. And that's that CPU board. So
Anthony, remind us what purple was supposed to mean?
there, it doesn't say. That's my problem. Now, is it purple or is it? Is it purple or is it blue that's not quite displaying very blue?
Or is it red and blue?
Or did someone think it was blue when they wrote down that blue is for this? I don't know. So,
Try just beating on it first.
no, I try not to do that.
It works.
Or it could be displaying blue and red at the same time.
I don't think it tries to display two at the same time. I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time, as my wife would say. So basically, what he was saying was he got the purple screen before. It was because a crystal had fallen off of a card, which I'm guessing might be either an accelerator or like a bridge board. It was an accelerator. And that, being that it was sitting, I guess it was probably sitting across some traces or contacts and was causing that. So I'm guessing once you
Accelerator won't run without the crystal.
well, no, yeah, it also won't run without the crystal. That's why I'm thinking this might be the accelerator, which is not really an accelerator in this machine. It's actually the RAM board. It's actually the CPU board, not RAM. I was looking at RAM, that's why. So this is the RAM. It's the nice thing about the 4000 is it's the first machine that had SIMs in it. One of them is your chip RAM, I think, yeah, and the other four are fast RAM. Oh, it is? I always thought the first one was chip RAM. Oh, see, it's good to have the designer in the room.
It's hard to believe he's still alive, isn't it?
Oh, wait, oh, wait.
What's weird is when you look at something like this. What's weird is when you look at something like this and you see your handwriting from 30 years ago.
So, of course, the issue with any of these machines, even the metal ones, is you got to take a little bit of care. Plastic's aged, and I mean, if you see, like this front is just held on by these tabs. I have one, this machine where these tabs are all, in really good shape. They can very easily not be in really good shape if something bad happens to them. And plastic gets brittle over time, so you basically have 2, 2, and 2. So you have to work your way across the front of the machine trying to get the front off. They didn't have the concepts we have nowadays of these simple cases where you could just, whoops. Someone had to say snap, right?
This case was designed in Westchester, right? Mechanics were the mechanical distiller.
I think it was her.
Herb, Moss Dog.
Is he still alive so I can yell at him?
He is.
Because I love the machine. I don't like this front.
Well, one of our mantras when I was there was it had to be easy to put together. It didn't mean it had to come apart easy, but it had to go together in like 3.2 seconds or something. Because down on the super line, I mean, if it wasn't like snap, 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 it backed everything up.
And then once it was snapped together, it was your problem.
If it broke while putting it together, they threw it in a pile and kept going. Later, they'd ship the pile without telling anybody.
I'm learning way too much.
Greg, remember when they opened the 18-wheelers and they were empty? the security guards have been selling the C64s out of the 18-wheelers on the property. We had the FBI come in more times than I can count.
Did you try booting it with a Ethernet card unplugged?
Yes. I'd already tried that stuff. That's why I'm not doing each step.
I assumed you tried all those.
Normally, and what I did was I pulled both cards out, tried to boot it. I pulled the fast RAM out.
That was all with your debugging thing earlier. I assumed you did all that.
I already tried all that with this machine, tried reseating all the SIMs, nothing. Which is why I'm suspecting, and I'm not, I'm not seeing any up. You can see I took the battery off in not a very elegant way a long time ago, before I realized I could just cut the two little things. So I got these just metal things sitting here, which I really got to do something about at some point. I'm suspecting it's this CPU card.
That may have a bunch of stink sockets, but yeah, all the motherboard chips are soldered on this one.
Yeah, that's why you can't do much with this machine besides, take this big CPU card out and hope that that's the problem. And I have, so what I bought at some point, which I don't know if it's any good, but you tend to, if you're collecting these, you tend to buy a lot of spare parts. I picked up the 030 card for the 4000 very cheaply because most people don't want it. They took it out to put something faster in. So those cards are actually available. Actually getting like a 3640 is probably not easy or cost prohibitive. What this is held in by is, and I'll show once I get it out, is just a bunch of plastic stands. So that's CPU card. It's held in by these plastic stands that hold it off the motherboard and the slot. It's the same slot that's in the 3000, although in the 3000 it's turned. So we're going to try putting this in. And amazingly, one of the stands that stayed in is in the perfect right place for this. Of course, one of the ones that came out isn't. Yeah. Let's try to get it out of here. I try to do it right so I don't have to redo it. See anything in there? See anything in there I should know about?
Take a look and try to remember a few things before I say something else stupid.
Right. Oh, it was Motorola. Okay.
Memory's not that bad.
So, and that's it. You just press that board down in. And now, generally, again, what I do is each step, do one thing, try it. Do one thing, try it, until you figure out what's wrong. And if you had a full set of boards and you're trying, and you pull out a board, boots up, that board was probably bad, but probably those other ones you took out before it are good. You can start throwing them back in and seeing, if that really was the problem. So I need this. Now's the fun part, is where you get to turn the machine on. And normally I also unplug, at least unplug the hard drive, which actually is easier for me to take from this end.
So you haven't tried this before, you're just going through
This is the first time, because I didn't want to take that whole thing out. It's, again, this CPU card's underneath this, and pretty much the same thing in a 2000 just to get at the battery. At least this one you can get the battery real easy, but to get the battery out in the 2000, you have the whole tray that holds the power supply and all the drives. It's 4 screws, on the front, 4 on the back. You have to pull that whole tray up out. That one's a big pain in the neck. This one was just a little pain in the neck. So I think I have everything hooked up. And we're going to see if we get a purple screen again. Or if we just get no screen.
Now know how to make it worse.
You've done a good job creating suspense, though.
Have you tried that 030 card or anything else?
No. It's been sitting on a shelf almost as long as this 4000's been sitting on my desk.
There's a big empty socket on that. Was there a chip missing?
There actually is. That would be the math coprocessor. The funny part is there's actually, I think, 2 empty sockets on that. And I think one was for a different 030. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look at it again. But from what I understand from the pictures, they're all like that.
So you're still thinking with the CPUs in ring right now then? And no lights, no LED?
Well, now I'm kind of not getting anything, and I'm going to be real pissed if I pull this RAM out again and the machine works.
Yeah, I was wondering how often is it just the connectors, given they're probably not gold plated, and even if they were,
Well,
they'd still be 35 years old.
Yeah, they're not gold plated. I don't think there's any gold anywhere in here. I see a lot of silver-ish, and I say ish because it's not very shiny anymore.
Can I see that 030 card?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to say no to you.
Get him to sign it later.
Sign my dead 4000.
Schaefer. Scott Schaefer.
Oh, okay.
That's his name on it. I couldn't remember his
He
name.
puts his name on it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my name's on the other one.
Does he have a Twitter handle on there?
So, no, Mark Schaefer.
We were
Mark
using
Schaefer or
token
Scott.
name
I can't remember his
back
first name. Scott Schaefer or Mark Schaefer, I forget. But
What's
then
that?
Fish and Knives, those are the 2 PCB layout guys. Terry Fisher, who still does boards for me.
Right. He's still
And
alive.
Mike Nines, I'm not sure where he is now.
So you take this thing to Geek Squad and see what they can do?
Yeah. They'll look at you real funny.
They'll sell you a printer.
And yeah.
They'll tell you
There's
how
an
to
HP stream over there.
take it to an Apple expert.
See if I tried to switch this to 8 meg chip RAM.
I mean, the fact that you're getting a colored screen tells you that thing's actually running, so.
Yeah. It's just something's wrong. Oh, I got my purple back.
What'd you do there?
I just took the chip RAM out and put it back in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, me too. I've done some searches for purple screen, and I haven't found anything definitive on what would be a purple screen in a 4000.
And what happens if you take the chip memory out? Shouldn't you get a different color screen?
I think that's black screen.
It's nothing screen?
Yeah, I want to go see that.
And it's clean? Did it actually change colors?
I mean, it should give the color
You should
for a
get
bad chip
you
RAM.
should
or
get a green
something.
screen, if it,
Yeah.
unless the green screen comes
not-
after the purple screen. but
It's not
should
getting
be
to the
purple.
point of testing chip RAM. Otherwise, right now, we'd be showing a green. So whatever the problem is, unfortunately, if I remember from the list, chip is pretty far in the process. So it still leaves a lot of potential problems along the way.
Berlin/Haney, and then Fisher and Guay were the 2 PCB layout guys.
Well, just for giggles. Fire it up without it. Oh, green.
That's different.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have chip RAM in it.
Yeah, it looks promising. It looks very
Drop
promising.
some chip RAM with that. I thought it wasn't Google like that.
It won't,
It'll get to the green screen without the
but it
chip
got
on
to the green screen,
That's encouraging.
and now it's back to purple.
The internet blames capacitors on this.
Well, and that honestly, that's if I can't get this machine working, would probably be the next thing I would try is sending it out to get recapped. Recapping this from the guy in Michigan is about $70.
Recap what?
The board.
What is it?
Replace all the capacitors.
Electrolytics?
Yeah.
Replaces?
And the tantalators, the service.
Yeah, it replaces all like these guys.
There probably aren't any tantalums on
I
there.
know, if we're going boom.
Probably all electrolytics.
Mm.
Look like they're all electrolytics.
And then it's another like 40 to do the
what about the-
CPU card also.
What about the power supply? Tried a different power supply?
No.
This is a standard, that was a standard AT power supply for the day. It was a PC power supply.
Mhm. I did, a friend of mine worked at SUNY Purchase in IT, and one day there was a 4000 sitting in the garbage near the gym. That was the toaster 4000.
Really?
And he grabbed it. What had happened was the fan in the power supply had seized,
Yeah.
and machine overheated, and they threw it out. It was their video toaster the Knicks used when they were recording their practices.
Yeah.
And I put a new fan in, and I replaced the 2 hard drives. So the hard drives being right next to it, it actually had melted the power connectors. So the power connectors, when you went to pull the power cord out of the hard drive, the whole connector slid right off the board. I slid it back on, I copied the hard drives to another drive, and the machine still works. That one still works. So I do have a second 4000 that I can play with, but I figured I'd bring this machine since it wasn't working and try to figure out. So actually, I'm going to drop this back in.
Orangey fuzz over there.
Yeah, it's dust. No success. This is how I spent a lot of days with my 2000,
Okay.
and now I'll be spending a lot of days with my 4000.
Listen up about 6 inches and go bang. Now, then try.
That was the
So,
Apple III.
no, that Apple III was 3 inches.
Is that to
Okay,
receive a
six-
Kickstart?
yeah, start at 3, work your way to 6. Yeah,
Theory could be the board.
So you're just flexing the PCB as you turn it on and off?
yeah,
trying to
I'm just flexing it a little bit, yeah, to see it. But
Isolate the sockets, or?
it's fairly well mounted. It's hard to, I don't want to flex it too much. I just sort of. But if you got an intermittent trace or V or something, if you just flex it a little bit, it'll do something different, right?
How hard is it to take
Where's Hackaday?
the board out?
Pretty easy, actually. There's no screws holding. It's just 4 or 5 plastic posts and the socket itself.
Does the red failure occur before purple or after purple? In other words, does it get further when it goes to red?
Well, it doesn't go through red to get the purple, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
probably the first one.
So when you're flexing, you're actually shortening the cycle, not get further in it. Then. If it lasted more than 5 years, we were wasting money.
Has to be warranty period and a little safety, probably.
Warranty?
Well, there was no warranty.
The gadgets. Maybe they changed a little by Greg's time, but yeah, there was a warranty because we'd ship before Christmas and we'd have to make all of them work. I just don't remember for like 64, so I just don't remember if it was 90 days or what.
Yeah, I'd take it out and give it a good cleaning. That's the only other cigarette. I mean, it could be dust short or something somewhere. Give it a good.
Trying to see if that dust is caught on that capacitor because it's leaking.
Which?
This guy. I guess not, because it blew out. So.
Looks like it's just a
Well.
piece of shit. What the hell is that? It's like some
Yeah.
skank. Well, I think there's no screw at all in that one. It's
Yeah.
there's some kind of
Something
corrosion.
settled in there.
That's why I say taking it out
Yeah.
and just cleaning the whole thing off. Could be anything at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Son of a bitch.
Well, I was hoping it'd be the CPU card, but I figured it was better bringing a machine I didn't know what was wrong with.
Well, I mean, if that CPU card doesn't even get you the purple screen, it could still be the CPU card, the one you got. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's entirely possible.